So about midweek, I was preparing a wonderful sermon. You're not going to hear that. In other words, I let that go when the week became what it has become. But I wanted to take a few minutes and talk to you just about baptism itself. Shelley and I, you may have read in the Christmas letter, if you actually open your mail, were married on Christmas Day. That's a weird time to get married. We didn't think that through in many ways, that I was going to be a priest and that we were going to have kids that would have other plans for us on Christmas Day, but that's when we got married in 1993, 25 years ago, Christmas Day. And so we had this humongous trip planned for us, but then when we did the math, and my mom and dad were, or my mom and her husband were, willing to come up and stay with the kids, we figured out, okay, it's going to be cold. They're going to be inside, and if most days with my mom and her husband or any guide, they're going to be watching cable news all day. And so we decided that we didn't want to inflict that upon our children, and we all went to Cozumel, Mexico. And my daughters got certified down there. They had been working on their scuba certification for some time. I've been diving since I was in college, and every day it was just wonderful. I would get up most days before any of them woke up, if the girls weren't diving, and I would just go out. And it was little groups and more advanced divers and more advanced dives, and it was wonderful. One day I was with my sister and her husband, and they would go out almost every day. They're very experienced divers, and we were with this family from Canada. Now, it took us literally 2 seconds to know they were from Canada because everything they had told us that. I mean, literally, their scuba equipment had Canadian flags on it. They had a towel that was a Canadian flag. I'm not kidding, their bags had Canadian flags on it. And actually, when I said, "Hey, I'm Eric," they said, it was like, "I'm Todd from Toronto, Canada." And I was like, okay, well, I didn't know that we were doing that. I said, okay, well, let me try this. I'm Eric from Virginia, or whatever. But I don't know if it was a political moment of the day that they just wanted to make sure in Mexico that everybody knew that they were Canadian and not us or whatever. But they were really proud from being from Canada. And it just made me think about identity and those things that grab a hold of us and tell us who we are. Parenthetically, I'm going to tell you this funny story since it's just a few of us. So their kid had a spear gun, and we never use a spear gun or whatever. And yet, he was really going to do this, like 20 years old, and he was going to spear gun a lionfish, and lionfish are bad. They were introduced in the Caribbean from Indonesia or something. Somebody thought, hey, let's let this out here, and it's killing the reefs, and it's a terrible thing. And so he sees a lionfish. We're like 80 feet under the water. And I showed him. I was like, hey, there's a lionfish. And so he comes over for the lionfish, and he comes real close to it. And the lionfish is like the font here. And he goes for it. And the lionfish dodges it, totally escapes. And we get back up to the boat, and I love this. He says, I didn't miss, he just got away. I'm going to use that in life. I don't miss, that whatever that was just got away. So I don't want to miss with a sermon or it to go away, but I do want to talk about their identity and how they form that. Last night, had some friends over, watching the snow, but more importantly to me, yesterday afternoon was watching the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I have rooted for the Chiefs since Shelley and I moved to Kansas City 25 years ago for seminary, and I stayed there 14 years and planted a church there and became a Chiefs fan. Now, the Chiefs are horrible until last night in the playoffs, and yet I would sit there year after year and suffer through this team because somehow it was a part of my identity, kind of like David Todd with Virginia Tech does these days. I mean, whatever this stuff is that grabs a hold of us, whether it's our national identity, being a Virginian, being from Roanoke, being a fan of a team, it kind of somehow has a claim on our lives, right? It tells us who we are, and we're defined in some measure by that. And what I would like to hold out for you today on a day of baptism is that this is normal human activity, and yet it also is dangerous if you don't recognize it. I'm not saying it's dangerous to be a Chiefs fan, although for 25 years it has. What I'm saying is, if we don't recognize the things that will have a claim on our lives, although they inevitably will, we will give ourselves away to things undeserving of us. Because something will own us. We will be baptized into some sort of waters. I think about this a lot as a dad, particularly a dad with young daughters, because I know that whatever they see on the movie screen and the TV screen and maybe in high school and middle school is telling them that they are owned by other ideas of themselves that are not our family's ideas of who they are to be, and God's ideas of who they are to be. And so every time that they say, I am my waist size, I am my looks, I am only what I am desired by other people to be, I am what other people tell me that I am, I hope that they realize that no, they've been baptized in other waters, and that they are created in the image of a God who loves them, and through Jesus has adopted them into his family. And I hope there that they will remember who they are. Every time that kids used to leave my church and go to college, especially in smaller churches, when they would come back, I would tell them, remember who you are. And I think remembering who we are is a humongous thing. And I say that to my girls all the time, remember who you are. Because other people, other things unworthy of you will make a claim on you. And so every time that they hear that they're just a voting block or a constituency or somebody to be advertised to or whatever, I hope that they will remember who they are and remember the greatness that God says that they are through the waters of baptism. It's a baptismal covenant. Will you seek and serve Christ in all persons and love your neighbor as yourself? And so every time that they think it doesn't matter how I treat other people, it doesn't matter how I look at anyone else, it only matters if I'm bombastic and loud and shout about it's all about me, and the ends justify the means, I hope that they will remember who they are and seek and serve Christ in all people and love their neighbor as themselves, and that they'll strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being. My sister said, after we got off the boat with the Canadians, well, why, we're proud Americans. You served in the military, Eric. Why didn't we have all this stuff on us, just saying, who we are as well. And I said, the thing is, when you're just that, you don't have to put on all the gloss. And the thing is, when you know who you are inside, it's imperfect in a world such as ours, but that comes out in small ways. It comes out when somebody is serving you dinner at a restaurant. It comes out when somebody is hurting and could totally be beat down, and yet you have a chance to offer a little bit of grace. It comes out. But it's not just a given. And it ain't just going to happen, Colston. You kind of got to want it. And that's what today is about. It's about forming an alternative identity. It's about saying who you really are and who you really want to be. And one day, far from now, I hope that this comes out in good ways for the benefit of the world. Because if you haven't looked around and noticed, the world needs it. We all need people to remember who they are and to know their truest identity is found in the waters of baptism. Jesus had a choice when he started his ministry. You just heard about it at the beginning of his ministry. And I know that seemed like I was about done there, and I was going to be, but I want to tell you this one thing. So Jesus is up in Nazareth, and he's going south, okay? And south is Jerusalem. It's where the temple is. It's the seat of all Jewish history and authority and everything else. Now, if you're the Son of God and you're Jewish, you would think you would just and you're going south, you would just go straight to Jerusalem, right? And you would say, hello, boys, I'm here. Everybody else out. We don't need you anymore. Son of God here. And yet Jesus decided, because he knew who he was, to not do that. And he took the most fortuitous, for all of us Gentiles and all of us that don't have it together all the time, he took the most fortuitous left-hand turn ever. And he went out to the Jordan River where John the Baptist was set up. And John the Baptist was saying, hey, everybody who's been left behind has a new day. Everybody who's been neglected by the status quo has a new chance. And all these people flocked out to him, but nobody in authority, nobody invested in the status quo. And Jesus made a decision to turn left and go out to John because he knew who he was. Huge left turn that means the world for each and every one of us here today. And Colston, one day, you're going to be going out in life, I promise you, and you're going to have a moment that you have to make a decision. And I hope you remember who you are and you make the right one because you're baptized in these waters. So come on up here and let's do a baptism.